Well, what were you just putting in front of your head?
Okay.
Oh, that studious moment.
I'm going to take notes. I'm going to take notes today.
Oh, okay. Well, hey, folks, it's something to talk about with Stuart and Vaughn, and she is still Vaughn.
And he's still Stuart.
We
I'm
just
so
have to
tired.
figure out what, what,
I'm so tired of looking at people in squares.
yeah. Or,
I mean, even the commercials now, everybody's in squares, and cooking shows, they're in squares, and talk shows in the news, and we're all in squares. I can't wait till we're not looking at each other in squares anymore.
there was an old folk song about little boxes full of ticky tacky, where everybody lived in these all little boxes, and now everybody is literally confined to their little
Yeah,
boxes
yeah.
and only venturing out. I did. Have you ventured out much this week?
Let's see. I mean, a little bit here and there. I told you I got my nails done, my hair done. I did go to a restaurant. I went and picked up some little tchotchkes got at a local gift shop here. Kind of ran in, ran out. I mean, not a lot, but a little bit, just a little bit here and there. And I'm wearing my mask and I'm doing what I think I'm supposed to be doing. But I'm not going crazy. I haven't been to the mall yet. I haven't been to the gym. But a little bit here and there, just kind of dipping my toe in the water.
Yeah, Lauren went to one of the major malls in the area this past week. She said it was almost like a ghost town. Number
Oh,
one, one of the anchor stores was open, but a couple of the other anchor stores were still completely shut down. And as you walk through the mall, it's like every fourth or fifth store is open, and they have restrictions.
yeah.
Uh, she said that it was really kind of strange uh, to be walking around and wanting to do some shopping, but there were so many places that were still shuttered up. I've gone to the grocery store a couple of times this week. Took the dog to the groomer this morning. They're still meeting you outside and taking your pet and following a lot of restrictions and all, but it's starting to open up a little bit more. It's funny. There's a friend of mine posted. She said, "I just had to go to the mall this week. I just needed to buy a few new pieces of clothing." She says, "Because the only thing I do is take the garbage out once a week, and I just can't decide what to wear." So she went out to buy a couple of new things to wear to take the garbage out.
Yeah. Well, we've all been kind of, dressing casually or whatnot. I mean, I'm usually in workout clothes Monday through Friday, and just because what are you doing? I mean, if I'm going to the grocery store or the mall, or I haven't been to the mall, but if I'm running in somewhere, I'll try to get dressed. But yeah, for the most part, been dressing pretty casually over here. But yeah, just kind of dipping my toe in the water, just doing a little bit here and there. That not much.
Yeah, it's and every week we see that the numbers are going up, that the places that have been open and restricted to maybe 25% occupancy, now it's maybe up to 50% occupancy. I drive by some restaurants, and those that have outdoor dining, there's people that are dining out on their patios, although the heat is starting to get up a little bit now, so sitting out on the sidewalk, unless it's really shaded and they have a big fan, can be a
Yeah.
little bit of a warm experience. But some of those restaurants have indoor dining. We haven't quite gotten there yet. We're still doing the curbside pickup and eating at home. But little by little, it'll start to come back.
I think so. Yeah. No, we went to a restaurant this past weekend, and you would have thought nothing was going on. I mean, it was pretty full. There were people walking around, and I don't know, just basically, I guess the people who are comfortable are out and about, and the people who are still not comfortable with doing that are staying home. So,
Yeah, well, and some of the reports are saying that yes, if you have your choice of either dining in or dining outside, outside is the better way to go.
yeah,
And I'm seeing that a lot of people are utilizing the park benches and picnic tables in some of the various parks because that apparently is fairly safe too if you take the family. pack a nice picnic. You're outdoors among the fresh air, and the park benches are usually and picnic tables are usually far enough apart, so that's kind of a way to venture out.
Yeah. Yep. It's I don't know, like that's how it'll be for now, and then we'll see. Because, like you said, in some areas the numbers are spiking, so I guess we'll have to see, what the next step will be.
Yeah, I think here
Now,
Dallas was it yesterday or the day before had reported one of their highest incidences of new cases reported. And some of the cities that this past week and all were filled. The streets were filled with protesters, and they're starting to see that there is an increase in the number of COVID-19 cases that are being reported too.
yeah, yeah.
So
I, I, like I said, I don't watch a lot of the news, but of course, it's hard not to hear the updates. They come,
yeah, you're right, and you
topic of conversation. So
yeah, you can follow just about as much as you can or you want.
yeah,
We text each other back and forth each week, and these last few weeks, I mean, it's just been hard to talk about anything other than being separated from society and how far we're willing to go out and get reacclimated. But we kind of decided that this past week has been a really tough week because George Floyd was put to rest in Houston, a huge funeral uh, for him, and I think it had nationwide relevance because so many people were drawn into the circumstances. But an offshoot to that you and I started talking about a little bit was this concept of defunding police departments. And when I first heard that, and if I'm not mistaken, Buffalo, New York was one of the first. They started talking about defunding the Buffalo Police Department, and the entire police department resigned. 57 officers or something just said that's it. That's probably one extreme. The other thing was right away I thought defund the police. That to me was probably the most insane idea I had ever heard of until I realized that there was kind of a different definition of what defunding the police was all about. It wasn't a matter of just saying, okay, the books are closed, no more salaries, no more any of this. The police department, frankly, is just gone. That's not what it means. And we started talking a bit about it, and that some people perceive it to be much worse than what it can or should be. And in talking to some of our officers from our police department, they say that defunding is probably not the proper word to be using, but reform is probably a better term. And they see that this defunding as maybe not such a bad thing. What the proponents of it are, and you tell me, what you've been researching too, is the fact that it's saying that there's a lot of things that we are putting on the shoulders of our police officers that really there should be other agencies to take care of. That if it's a having to do with mental illness, if it's having to do with things that are just not critical to the police department's role, that yes, maybe those should be given. That money that you are now using the police officers for can be given to another agency to take care of that, so the police department can concentrate on responding to those critical issues that we all want our police to respond to.
well,
And
yeah.
I know you're passionate about this too.
Well, I am, but it's not fair for me to even really. I have probably more questions than I have comments and opinions because I'm not knowledgeable enough yet on this proposal. I don't, we've gone from the word abolish, speaking in reference to the police. We've gone from the word abolish to defunding. Now you're saying reform. Those are all very different words with very different meanings. And so I'm a little all over the place here right now. What is it that they, whatever group this is or whoever, what are we saying? Are they just trying to find the right word? Because we've gone from abolish. Yeah, and I'm speaking, listen, I'm part of the general population. I'm not an expert on this topic by any means. So I'm just probably a part of the majority. I'm general public who's getting information from the media, from my friends, from family, having conversations with neighbors, social media, etc. So I'm part of the majority right now that's just trying to understand what are we saying about the police? What do we mean behind what we're saying? What is the goal? So I'm very unclear on what we're even suggesting here or proposing. But I will say that generally speaking, as part of the general public, with the information that I have right now, I think we need to be very careful and mindful in what we propose, because I do believe that we need to ultimately and at the end of the day support our law enforcement and respect them and give them the credit where credit is due and not punish them or stereotype them based on the behavior, the very bad behavior of a small percentage of people. So I think some of the words and reaction came from obviously the tragic death of George Floyd, and so there was some anger from that. But that's an isolated case, and it should be an isolated conversation, which is part of a big movement. Don't get me wrong, but his death is its own case, and should not necessarily, while it's part of the big picture, should not define the entire picture, because there are so many variables that fall under this umbrella of our police and what we expect of them and the training that they should get, and being better educated. You said something earlier about us expecting so much of our police, not only to enforce the law, but to understand mental issues, and perhaps just because you remind me that comment reminds me a lot of what we expect of our teachers. You put a teacher in a classroom, and he or she is expected to educate. Well, guess what? It's not realistic to think that they're just going to educate. They have a room full of children who have varying, behavioral issues, let's say.
You're absolutely right.
So it's very difficult. We do need to, out of all the words that you gave me, reform is probably one that I would grasp onto, and perhaps maybe think a little bit more about how we train, where we find potential candidates for the police force, background checks, personality check. I mean, the whole gamut. I'm just saying perhaps maybe we need to be a little bit more selective and mindful in the process that a potential police officer has to go through before they get onto the force, whatever.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And to take it a step further, there's a lot of difference between what the police force can handle and what they're required to do in a small town, a medium-sized city, a large metropolitan area. Whether you've got a police force that is a dozen police officers or 100 police officers or thousands of police officers. Each one of these is different, and each individual police department, it's up to them to formulate their own protocol. There is no statewide or nationwide protocol that says this is how all police forces in the state of Texas, if you will, must operate. They can use that as a guideline, but they have to formulate their own policies based on their own community. But part of this discussion is, for instance, they were saying if somebody calls 911 to report some homeless people that are living under a bridge or something, that may become something that the police respond to. But what do the police do? They just try to refer those homeless people to an agency that will help them. Social workers helping in situations like that. Kids maybe that are misbehaving on a playground. Is that a definition of something that police need to be dispatched for? I think part of that, what we're talking about in that reform is, yeah, if it means taking some bucks away from the budget for the police department in order to put that into more social workers to go out and take care of some of these other non-critical police areas, that may be a positive step in reforming the police department. So they are not out taking care of homeless people when they really need to be taking care of violations on our streets, and perhaps other issues.
I hear what you're saying, and I agree with you. But then the question enters my mind: crime is crime, and you just don't know where crime's going to erupt. So you send a social worker out to address a fight between two teenagers or on the playground or whatever. One of them has a weapon. I don't know. Now you got a social worker who might be prepared and trained to deal with the kind of mental aspect of the situation, but not the weapon that's involved. I just want. I just think that crime is crime, and our police officers need to be able to address crime and be there to keep us safe. And I think for the most part, that's what they do. And I think that we've had some bad things happen, but not majority. I just think we definitely have had some, and it goes back, in my opinion, back to if we're going to reallocate funds, however they're doing it, I don't know the logistics. I would think a lot of it should go toward training, recruiting, training, educating, hiring, and then making sure teachers, I know, have to go through a reevaluation. When I taught, I know I had to, every year I was evaluated, and based on my performance, and in the classroom and outside the class, I was given tests and whatnot and whatever, and maybe that's something else we need to do. Maybe they are doing it already. But to me, obviously, I don't want to take away the concept of our law enforcement fighting crime. I want them to continue to be able to do that. I don't want to tie their hands in any way, really. I want to make sure we provide them with the freedom and the resources and, and the trust to be able to do that. Having said that, I do think the current state or condition right now of many departments out there need to be reevaluated and reformed. And then I think we need to look into where we're finding candidates for the police department, who's raising their hand, who's wanting to become a police officer, why, what are your credentials, what is your training, how are we educating them? I think a lot of the money, if we are relocating, should go into square one. And then as we move forward, continue to reevaluate performance and stay on top of the state of the police force.
But and I think you're right. Not only is this an issue of training, but it's also an issue of reinforcing that training.
Mm-hmm.
Just like a lot of other professions in teaching, you have to be recertified after so many years, and there's new rules and regulations that come along that you need to be aware of. And maybe there's an old regulation that you pull off of the policy, and add a new one in. This is something that is ongoing in the police departments too. And also, I'm a firm believer that that our police officers have a job to do. I think it's a responsibility of their watch commanders and everything to make sure that they are overseeing what's going on with their departments. Because if they see that there's maybe a little bit of something that is a little bit out of kilter with a certain officer or so, make sure that they react to that quickly and make sure that that officer may be corrected. Maybe not fired, reprimanded, thrown off of the force, but it may be something that is minor today that can be corrected so that it doesn't become a major issue later. And that's up to those officers, sergeants, lieutenants, captains, and all, to make sure that they are in a position of always knowing where their police officers are all the time and what they're doing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, for me, again, I don't understand really the details that structure that make up this I don't know, I'm saying this proposal. I know, I feel like a lot of it is just people wanting to react in some way. They don't necessarily know what the change is that they want to see made or changes, but they want to see the bad go away.
And they want to see the bad go away today.
Right. Exactly. They want to see the bad go. And I do believe that the bad that we have seen makes up a small percentage of all the good that the police provide our communities. I believe that the majority of them are good. And I do believe that majority of them are out there to keep us safe and are caring, and we can trust them. I believe the majority are I believe the majority make up those type of police officers. But there are those few bad apples. But you know what, Stuart? There are bad apples in the teaching profession, in the medical profession, in companies across our country, in organizations, both for profit and non. I mean, you name it, there are bad apples everywhere. And if we start to just stereotype and generalize entire groups based on the actions of a very small percentage, which, by the way, it is the small percentage that we all see, because it is the small percentage that the media shows us. You and I discussed this last week, right. how during the rioting, they're showing just the burning cars and jumping on police cars and smashing and vandalizing and things of that nature. That's what we're seeing. We're not seeing them interviewing both sides and helping us understand what's being done, what's being discussed, what's your cause, what's your cause. There's no real good, educating out there. And so we're just seeing the worst of the worst, and in my opinion, I believe, the small percentage of what really represents the whole picture. So I do believe that there is a problem, and I do believe that a lot of this reaction is people who want the problem to go away, and so therefore we need to make some changes. And so that's good, that's constructive, but we need to be realistic about it, and we need to be smart about it. And I also think we need to continue. My fear is that there's such a disrespect right now toward the police departments across our country, really. And that's scary to me, because what happens when they go out there to do their job? And now we've kind of said in our actions that it's okay that we don't respect them right now. We don't even want them right now. We want to either abolish, or we want to refund or defund, or we want to reform. That's a job that requires respect. You need to, and when I say respect, what I mean is be law abiding. Be a law-abiding citizen, follow the rules, be respectful. I guarantee you in a lot of situations, and I'm not speaking of anyone in particular, I'm saying generally speaking, should you be a law-abiding citizen, I think your rights will be very, very well protected for the most part.
And you know, and I think part of going along with that is when you talk about that respect works both ways. If the police respect the rights of the citizens and the citizens respect the position and the rights of the police, they will live in harmony much better. If a person is pulled over for a traffic violation, you know, if you don't look at it as something that is negative, in other words, oh my God, you know, I need to get to work and everything, and oh, maybe I was speeding a little bit, but you know, oh man, this officer pulled me over, and there's that the stage is set for maybe a volatile situation. Now, that police officer, as he approaches that car, doesn't know what he's going to encounter. It may be a split second decision as to whether he has to have that person get out of the vehicle or simply put the window down and show me your license and registration. That's where part of this whole issue comes from, is that sometimes the black community says, well, if I had been white, maybe he would have told me just to put the window down and show me my license and registration. But because I'm black, gets me out of the car. That's part of what you're saying about is that that they're showing the bad side of it, because they're probably, you know, there's 100-fold the other way, is simply doing the job the way it's supposed to be done. And if you were speeding, yes, officer, what was the problem? Well, we just clocked you going 10 miles over the speed limit. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. You either become defensive about it and argumentative about it, or you say, I respect your position that you told me, and I don't think I was speeding, but you give me a summons and I'll show up in court and I'll fight my case if I want to. That's the respectful way of doing it. We're fortunate in our community that we live in, there is a very, very close friendship between the citizens and the police department. They often have social events together. They often have interactions on several levels on the schools, in the religious communities, whenever there is some kind of a citywide event. The police are there, and they're not just there standing on the corner waiting for something negative to happen. They're there talking to the people and acting with the people, trying to get the police and the students to interact with each other and understand. That's where that level of respect, as you were saying, comes from. And
Mm-hmm.
you know, that sometimes gets muddied when it gets up to the major city level. You know, so I guess we as individuals in our own communities need to look at it and say, what can we as citizens do to bridge the gap that may be between us and our law enforcement?
Well, that could be part of it. Yeah, I think that's a very good point. Bringing the community together more. From like the police officers, you know, the community, bridging whatever gap there might be between groups. I think that's a great idea. And I also think it's interesting. I think you're right about different police departments, where they're located, the type of relationship they have with their community members. Also, the type of interaction that they have with them, and probably plays a big part in how they get along, and the level of respect that they have going both ways. But that was why I was just saying that this talk right now, a lot of negative talk right now about police, as a whole group, concerns me for them, really, for their safety too. Because,
Right.
like I said, I mean, you have people right now who just think very little of them right now. And we not even respect doesn't even come into the vocabulary. I mean, you have people that are just downright angry with them right now.
Well,
And
it's an assumption. I think sometimes they just assume, well, if there's a few officers that are going to be doing illegal things on the street, that maybe there's a lot more of them in the department that are doing that. And I think probably the reverse is true, and it makes the good officers look bad when there is a bad apple that usurps their power.
not only look bad, but we put them in serious danger on the streets, because now we've almost kind of said that it's acceptable to think this way. And somebody could be in a scenario where they're part of a criminal act, whatever it might be, and because of all this talk we're generating, the police show up and they're just like, you know what, I'm going to get away with whatever I want right now, because the general consensus is right now that we don't like you guys very much. We don't trust you. You're all bad. So back away from me. And or something worse happens and they get into some kind of, and then you might have some serious things happen out there on the streets. And so I think you've got that concerns me as somebody who looks to our police force as a group of men and women who are there to protect us. And it concerns me moving forward that we're going to lose a lot of good ones. We're not going to get a lot of good ones. People are going to be like, we don't want to be a part of that. And then we are now kind of destructuring the concept and the physical makeup of this organization. And that's concerning, because we if you really think about it, we need them. So and yes, there might be some, as in any organization, industry, company, as we talk, there's always room for improvement.
Absolutely.
That's where we are. Well, we've been there, wherever, if we've been there, or if we're there now, or whatever, but it will never go away. There will always be room for improvement. And I think that's where we are. And we all understand that. I think we're all on the same page there. But I think as we work through the process of reforming, since that's the word I would like to use, let's do it with some respect and some trust. Because while we figure this out, we still need our police force behind us and on the streets protecting us. So that's, and I think you hit one of the nails on the head when you said mutual respect. But I will tell you a simple solution: be a law-abiding citizen. I mean,
don't put yourself in a position of
tell our kids when they're young, make good choices. When they go out of the house, make good choices. Well, guess what? You could be a 75-year-old man, and I'll tell you, if you're out in the public, make good choices. If you're a 43-year-old woman, make good choices. I mean, I think a lot of this too is not always color of skin. It's your choice of behavior.
Well, and a good example of that is when you have seen on camera instances of protesters that will get right in the face of the police, and they are yelling at them and borderline ready to spit in their face. It's the citizen that's putting themselves in a tough position, because if the police officer has to use any kind of force or restraint on that individual from that irate position that they've put themselves in, then they say that it was police brutality. But if they're being egged on, they have a responsibility to keep the peace. And if the perpetrators are gonna provoke them, then they have to be ready for what is gonna be the result. The other side is, and the cameras don't cover that enough, is those people that were walking down the streets, black, white, mayors, council people, protesters, arm in arm, with or without signs, that were peacefully saying things need to change, that the cameras don't spend as much time on that because, like you said earlier, the headlines are the burning vehicle down the street or the smashed storefront. But that exactly to the point that you made, Vaughn, was that it comes with individual respect. If I don't respect myself and I don't respect my ability to follow the law of my community, then I'm the one that's the bad guy. You know, I'm the bully. But if I understand that that man with a badge over there is trained and he's gone through the training and all he wants to do is do his job, and if he says to me, "Excuse me, sir, but would you please just step up on the curb, just get out of the street and please step up on the curb onto the sidewalk," he's not threatening your life. He's trying to uphold the law. And you've got to respect what he's saying and say, "Yes, sir, I'm sorry. Step up on the curb." Because if you don't, and you're going to stay there off the curb and in the street, then don't blame him for the reaction that might happen.
All right.
It's really just, it's common sense, I think we're talking about.
Well, and it's also, and I agree with you completely, it's also very dangerous for us to look at some of these videos. I'm not saying I agree with or not agree with the takeaway from some of these videos that we've seen, because let's face it, everything gets captured on video today. But I think that, you know, you need to, when we look at these videos, we're looking at these videos from the comfort of our own home. We are not being threatened in any way. We watch the video maybe once or twice even. Oh, we missed that. Did you see that? Did you see when that happened? So now that becomes part of our thought process. We have time to think it through. We get the opinion of our spouse who's watching it with us. We get to talk about it, and then we get to talk about it in hindsight. And then we start to question the behavior that happened in 30 seconds, or let's say a minute, and we get to sit back and say, "Oh, well, here's what they should have done, and here's how they should have done it." Well, that's not realistic. That's not humanly possible in 30 seconds, or let's admit whatever, however long the video might have lasted, or the part of the video that we are, you know, that is out for us to view. But I think that we all give our opinions, general public give our opinions on a video that we're able to watch in the way that I just described it. But it's not comparing apples to oranges and how we see it. We don't get to give a pick. We weren't in that moment. We weren't in that. We weren't looking over our shoulder, perhaps thinking that we were in some kind of danger. We didn't maybe see the actions that led up to that part of the video. So really, is it fair for us to give all of our opinions of what you should have done, how you should have done it, what I would have done differently? If you had done this, it wouldn't have ended up like that. It's not really fair for us to do that. We're watching it the way, and then we're looking at it in hindsight. We're not that police officer in the moment, in that 30 seconds or however many minutes, making decisions. I mean, you got it. That they are in a profession that they are fearing for their lives many times, and they have to make split-second decisions.
Yeah. You know, and when the news media shows that, it's interesting how when they kept replaying the incident with George Floyd, they kept saying, "Now we want to warn you that these images are disturbing." Well, that to me was almost like adding fuel to a fire. It was because the more people that see, the more people that get angry about it, then that's the more people that are going to pour into the street. And ultimately, it was determined that it wasn't George Floyd that did something wrong to start the situation, and all that it was the result of just stopping him for questioning that escalated into the police, overstepping their bounds. Uh, we live in a society that is probably more reactive than it is active or proactive. It's a lot easier to just react, whether it's right or wrong, to just react to a situation and get incensed about the situation. And then later you say, well, that's what it was about. And that's why it makes it more difficult for us to function and right away just say, well, it's all the police's fault. Maybe it wasn't all the police's fault until we know. Uh, but going back to what you said earlier, it's a matter of just understanding your police force. And again, that's probably easy for you and I to say because we live in a community that does respect their police. But our police force, a lot of the suburban police forces are a lot different than the police forces in the inner cities of this country. That those inner city police, frankly, don't have the time to write a parking ticket or an overdue, parking ticket or a speeding ticket because they are so responsible for just patrolling the streets to keep the calm. And so it depends on where you live,
Yeah.
but it doesn't diminish the respect level that really should apply to the inner city level as well as the suburban level too.
Yeah. Absolutely. And again, I mean, obviously we're sharing our thoughts and opinions. There's a lot of work to be done. I think there's like I said, a lot of room for improvement. Like I said earlier, if we are going to defund or reallocate funds or whatever it is that they're doing, whatever changes they're making, I said this earlier, and I think it bears repeating that I think a lot of this is let's pay a little bit more attention to our recruiting process, our training process, our educating, and educating everybody. I think we all and then like I said, even in the education industry, reevaluating as you go along, reevaluating, retraining, because there's always room for improvement. I think that's where
Right.
we are now too, but a lot of it is educating as well. So I just want it to be done mindfully and respectfully is what I would like to see happen through the process.
Yeah, it's interesting. Minneapolis became the epicenter of this whole situation, and so Minneapolis has been looked at as part of this defunding concept too. And the Minneapolis City Council, this was something a piece that I found yesterday, said that it is looking into defunding, and I agree with you. I like reforming better than the word defunding, but they've got almost a $200 million police budget. And they made a statement and they said, and I'll read this, it says, we can invest in cultural competency and mental health training, de-escalation and conflict resolution. We can resolve confusion over a $20 grocery transaction without drawing a weapon or pulling out handcuffs, wrote one of these councilmen. The whole world is watching. We can declare policing as we know it a thing of the past and create a compassionate and nonviolent future. And there again, I think that part of what we've been discussing too is what a lot of police departments around the country are starting to say. This, don't confuse or come up with a different definition for defunding. It's just a matter of what can we do so that we can build better relations between the police and the community, and then, excuse me, work on some of these additional issues of mental health and homelessness and vagrancy and things that are not major issues, but might be able to be handled by a different department, so that our policemen can be out there interacting with the public and building the better relations with the public and respecting the public, so that that mutual respect will be better for all of us.
I agree. That was well said. Almost like specialized departments within the
And that doesn't matter on the size of the department either. You know, whether it's a major metropolitan area, or it is a small town or a middle-sized city or suburb, and all, it's a concept that can work. But the city councils, the police departments, and the public all need to work hand in hand on this. And I think we can come up with a resolution, because part of this whole situation is something we've been talking about for hundreds of years. And now it's finally gotten to a point where I think more people are willing to say, we need to do something, and we need to do something now.
Right. Absolutely. And that's a good thing.
Yeah.
I mean, change. What is the expression? Change is good. I don't know.
Change is good. Yeah. Change is good, except when it's bad.
Yeah, there you go. And see, Stuart and Vaughn have all the answers, don't we?
And also, you know, our police have been kind of looking over their shoulders the last couple of weeks, because they don't know whether the people looking at them are looking at them positively or negatively. But I will tell you that if you walk into a grocery store, or you walk into Home Depot or whatever, and there's a police officer, stop and say, thank you very, very much for all you do for our community, because they need that appreciation. They want that appreciation. They've earned that appreciation. And we as you know, citizens, need to let them know that, because that's going to make it a lot better all the way around.
Absolutely. Could not agree with you more. Well said. I'd be curious to know who's going to make up the round table of individuals who are going to create the new, I don't know, structure or makeup of the, I guess it's going to be done on an individual basis, department by department, because like you said, every kind of community is different, has different needs. And so, you know, it's a different makeup and demographics and geography and whatever the case may be. But so I would think it's going to be up to each individual department. But I would hope, I guess, as we're sitting here talking and you've given some good ideas and suggestions on what you would like to see, how you would like to see a police department structured and whatnot, I would hope that they would make up a group of people, like a diverse group of people, to sit together, not just police, not just, you know, government officials, not just police, but maybe even bring in some community members, bring in some stakeholders, bring in some, you know,
citizens council.
Yeah, bring in and really listen and then have some of the police there, and have maybe other first responders, and have just a diverse group of people to help build a compatible structure that, to your point earlier, that brings the community together. Obviously, we need to focus on law enforcement skills and who's qualified and trained to deal with different types of issues and whatnot. But also, how do you just on a day-to-day basis, not dealing with crime and whatnot, how do you build that trust and relationship between groups of people?
I think you're right. I mean, it's got to be your council people, your politicians, your police officers, and get some community input, because I think that's the recipe for any police department and any city for making what has appeared to be broken, make it better. And I hope that our discussion this morning has made some sense to those that have been watching and listening. It's time for us to go run on and do the rest of our day and the rest of our weekend. But as always, just great spending the time with you, Vaughn. And you and the family have a good weekend.
Well, you too. Tell everybody hi and have a safe and happy weekend.
All right. And we will see everyone here next week again for another conversation on something to talk about. Go out and make it a good weekend and a good week ahead.
Bye, everybody.